Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1900. This is the 19th anniversary show for the FDH Lounge. And of course, this hasn't been just 100 mini episodes a year over the course of the 19 years. Of course, the 152 episodes at Sports Talk Network, where we did multiple segments per show from 2007 to 2011. This is our anniversary show because we debuted on January 14th, 2007. And from that point on, it has been just one long continuous run here on the show. We've actually done 4 full-length segments since leaving the station, some full-length live streams, including our NFL draft broadcast last year that 2 of today's participants, Ben Chu and Chris Galloway, were a part of. But the panel that we have here today, it is shaped by what we've done over the course of the last couple of years. Starting in 2020, when we did a panel for the show previewing the 2020s, I put together a panel at that time of a lot of our FDH Lounge dignitaries, sort of a cross-section. Some guys had broadcast together previously, some had really not. Chris Galloway, John Adams, Ron Glasnap, and Anthony and Matt Petrone. And so that is a panel that we have used on a couple of different occasions. And there have been a couple times over the course of the last couple of years where we've just had Ben Chu come in and substitute for the panel. We've had things come up and putting the panel together wasn't really feasible. So I ended up going to Ben and doing the segment with him. Today, we bring in Ben with a couple of the regulars that we've used for the segment the last couple of years. I'm going to start by bringing in one of my fellow original FDH Lounge dignitaries. He was there on January 14th, 2007, along with the other original dignitaries, FDH Senior Editor Jason Jones, FDH Director of Research Nate Noy, and 2 other very smart individuals, Tim Faust. It's been a little too long since we've had him on the show. Got to get him back on at some point. And the late Burrell Jackson. So a very, very, very smart and talented and informed original crew for the program. Chris and I spent a lot of time sort of conceptualizing the show on a car ride back from Athens in the fall of 2006. He was kind enough to bring me to an OU football game and give me one of his very excellent season tickets. We were watching a game. We were talking a lot about the show the whole way back and what it was going to be like. He is one of the folks who has been the most influential in shaping our FDH Lounge pantheon, our voting for the best of the best. In today's segment, I should mention this at some point, we are going through balloting for the top 10 NFL quarterbacks of all time. And this is what you might call a pantheon adjacent segment. And because it's that and because it's football, and Chris has been our most regular football correspondent the last couple of years, ain't no way we could do something like this without him. He actually hosted at his home our first anniversary show since leaving the station. In 2012, myself and Ken Detweiler trekked out to Lake County, Ohio, and sat down and did a show with him. And as I mentioned during our NFL draft show last year, which was dedicated to Ken and to Anthony Petrone, both of whom had just recently passed away, Ken being a guy who just formed like the quickest chemistry with people of anybody that I've ever known. So like Ken and Chris had never sat down before, had never done anything. And yet, if you listen to those shows today, the 5th anniversary shows, they still hold up. I like to think that all of our anniversary shows and all of our other ones would, but that one certainly does. And Chris has been a regular part of that and so much that we've done over the course of time. You may look and look and look, but you will not find any of the dignitaries that have been more influential in helping to mold us into what we have become over the course of the 19 years. My good friend, my friend all the way back from Ohio University back in the day, Chris Galloway, my man, and one of the finest public policy minds in the state of Ohio. Chris, great to have you on, buddy. Thank you so much for being here today.
You know what? To send the check for that intro, but wow, I do appreciate it. What a fun journey it's been to join you on this from time to time, and you know how much I value our friendship and how much I enjoy being able to jump on and do these shows with you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, right back at you, buddy. Appreciate it. This thing would not be anywhere close to the same without you. So you being somebody that represents the original dignitaries along with myself, somebody that is one of the longest running FDH Lounge dignitaries I'm going to bring in next. This dates back to, I believe, 2008. So the year after we came on the air, my good pal, Ben Chu, I got to know him at Sports Talk Network when he was living here on the North Coast. And he has been somebody that, as I said, he's been very helpful in filling in with the panel the last couple of years. And specifically in 2023, when we did a segment, that was a thing where, again, when you look at one of the forerunners to the FDH Lounge show and one of the great influences, the first show I ever did at the Sports Talk Network, I hadn't really done anything broadcast-wise since college. My good friend Ron Glasnap brings me in off the sidelines to do reality check with him and our great eternal friend Dave Adams. But you get to January 2023, we're about to tape this thing, and Dave, just a couple weeks before, has gone on to claim his eternal reward, which, great for him. For the rest of us that are left behind, not so much. So there's no way we wanted to put together a panel then. So Ben came in instead, and under similar circumstances last year, we wanted to do the panel again in person, but Anthony Petrone, suffering from stage 4 colon cancer, didn't realize he didn't have that much longer to go. It turns out that he didn't. So Ben, on 2 different occasions, has been here in lieu of the regular panel that we've had through the course of the 2020s. I wanted to bring him in today because, again, there are few people, if any, that have been a bigger part of the show than him over a period of time. Co-author with myself and the great Russ Cohen with the top 75 players in pro basketball history. He has been our regular hoops correspondent over a period of time, but we've brought him in for some other stuff. And again, he and I have had a very compelling, I think, mini series on the show about the streaming industry. He and I are big nerds about the streaming business. So we're always talking about the mergers that are coming, the product launches, what does it all mean? Where are we going with this stuff? Ben is somebody that we can use on any number of different topics, not just basketball, as he has proven with our anniversary shows and proving again here today. So my great friend, Ben Chu from the Pacific Northwest here in Portland. And I join everybody nationwide that has the hashtag going, stay safe, Ben, as you're out there in Portland. So,
well, we will always do the best we can, Rick.
That's all we can ask of you, buddy.
That's all we can ask. So.
Yeah. Keep your head on a swivel.
Good to be back and good to be talking about the NFL top quarterbacks of all time.
Yes, and this is the second time that you've been on with Chris, but the first time that Chris hasn't been behind the wheel while that's been a segment. So Chris is in a standard setting along with the rest of us. Great to have you on.
You thing next Sunday. That's exactly what happened again.
Really? Well, that'll be hilarious if we reprise that for the NFL draft, because we will be reprising the NFL draft live stream. The form in which Chris joins us in remains to be announced, I suppose. So we'll see how that goes. But what I talked about before with Ron Glasnap, as far as folks that were sort of dignitaries before there were dignitaries, because again, I was at the Sports Talk Network 4 years before this show got launched. Somebody who had been a regular fantasy sports contributor to fantasydrafthelp.com, primarily on our niche sports drafts of tennis and golf. My great friend, Johnny Adams, who I'll go all the way back to high school with. And I remember in particular, one of the funniest moments over a period of time of doing any of these things. I know it was 2008. I don't remember this lady's name. And I'm glad I don't remember, because I don't want to clown on her. It's not the idea is not to clown on her in mentioning this, but some tennis writer came on to do the fantasy tennis draft for that year. And we go just by grand slams, basically. And I remember that we sort of blanched at her using an early first round pick on Andy Murray. And I'm reading her column a little bit later on, and she mentions that. And she's like, dear readers, I'm afraid the folks that I was with, they're nice guys, but I guess they just don't get it about Andy Murray this year. So it was a little condescending towards us. And that's I hate to say it, but Johnny, she was kind of like Bubby Brister. She was seeing ghosts on that one there.
Yeah, her appetite was too big. He didn't measure up that year. Now Andy's a great player, of course, but
yeah. She was 4 years early on that guy.
Yeah, she was too soon, as they say. Well, thank you for the kind introduction. It's nice to be aboard and with the panel here. So looking forward to discussing quarterbacks.
Yes, we're going to do all of that. And then typical of how we've gone over the course of the show. When I said in the intro that when you're talking about whether it be the Pantheon or some of the other things here, one of the most consistent voices in my ear helping to make things better has been Chris. And for this one, Chris was like, why don't we do a bonus thing as well? 5 most overrated quarterbacks also. So I thought to myself, for the purposes of simplicity, let's limit this to the panelists that are going to be on the show. And so, again, Ron was initially slated to be here with us until those meanies at his workplace ended up calling him in for today. So the way that it's going to go is I'm just going to kind of go through. I'm going to read off the overrated ones from each of our lists that we submitted. Then we can kind of talk about it a little bit. And as far as the ones who received multiple votes, I will note that as well. The ones that we had here for Ben's ones, and he left his in order: 1, Ben Roethlisberger; 2, Jeff Hostetler; 3, Trent Dilfer; 4, Len Dawson; 5, Dan Marino. For Johnny, his 5 most overrated: Bob Greasy. For those of you on the video feed, you can see me shaking my fist. Number 2, Eli Manning; 3, Terry Bradshaw; 4, Tony Romo; 5, Ben Roethlisberger. My most overrated: Doug Flutie, Ben Roethlisberger, Cordell Stewart, Aaron Rodgers, Michael Vick. Ron's most overrated that he had: Eli Manning. Or I'm sorry, that's Chris's most overrated. The most overrated for Ronnie. Okay, Ronnie's were Joe Namath. Now, he said never the same after his knee injury and more interceptions than touchdowns. Fran Tarkenton, never won a Super Bowl or NFL championship, 57% completion percentage. Dan Marino, again, no championships. Eli Manning, only a 4-time Pro Bowler in a day and age when they give those away like glasses of water. And also, did he win the titles or did the team? And then Bob Greasy, he says best game manager ever, question mark. I would say no. I know that was a rhetorical question. For Chris's, it was counting from 5 to 1. Eli Manning, Archie Manning, Troy Aikman, Joe Namath, Terry Bradshaw. So as a compilation here, receiving 3 votes, Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger. Something about that class of 04, huh? 2 votes for Terry Bradshaw, Bob Greasy, Dan Marino, Joe Namath. I feel personally attacked on 2 of those names. And the other ones receiving 1 vote in alphabetical order: Troy Aikman, Len Dawson, Trent Dilfer, Doug Flutie, Jeff Hostetler, Archie Manning, Dan Marino, Aaron Rodgers, Tony Romo, Cordell Stewart, Fran Tarkenton, Michael Vick. So I'll just kind of go around the horn as I'm looking at the folks here in order here. So I'll start by throwing it to you, Chris. That is a very, very, very eclectic list for the most overrated of all time, and had to be a whole lot of different criteria being used. I know, like in the case of me, like I put Aaron Rodgers on mine for probably the same reason Dan Marino appeared on another one, that if he's not in your top 10 or your 5 honorable mention, then he kind of has to be on the overrated list because of the consensus of where they're at. So a lot of different criteria, though, that people were using on this, clearly.
Yeah, I you're right. And I even wrestled with a couple guys that I was considering in my top 10 also being on my overrated, because I think there is a world when you can be both, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, my criteria really had to do more with sort of the media hype, the fan hype versus the reality of who they were in terms of their situations and what they actually delivered statistically, et cetera. You know, I loved Eli Manning coming out of Ole Miss. He was that draft. He was my number 1 quarterback that I had rated in that. And again, I think he had a great career. And it's they've got him in the Hall of Fame, and people talk about 2 Super Bowls, and I'm like, and he was 117 and 117.
Mm-hmm.
He was a 500 quarterback, and unless he was beating the Patriots in a Super Bowl, or the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, he just never really, you take those away and it's like, okay, he wouldn't be he wouldn't be there. Not statistically, not for any other reason. So that was how I tried to sort of, in my prism, go through it. As you know, I'm a, big Cowboys fan. Troy Aikman was a really good quarterback, right? But the function of that was that team around him. There were a lot of quarterbacks that could have done what he did. And there were a lot of quarterbacks playing along in the NFL when he did, that if they had that roster and that coaching staff, would have far exceeded Troy. Again, back to that conversation that we have every draft cycle about it matters where you go, right?
Mhm.
It really matters. Your coaching matters. Again, Joe Namath, he's the original, Hollywood hype, element to me. I also think, I know the teams were terrible, but I don't know. I don't know what you hang your hat on really with Archie Manning. Some people have him in their top 10 of all time. And I'm like, based on what? Like, I know they don't have the wins. He doesn't have the Pro Bowls. He doesn't have the Super Bowls. He has nothing. I know, I've gone back and watched some of his old classic games and stuff, but again, good quarterback, but the amount of hype exceeds, and the same thing with Aikman. Good quarterback, right? Terry Bradshaw, the original game manager, in my opinion. Great quarterback, great career. I'm not even going to argue whether he should be in the Hall of Fame. But the overhype on who Terry Bradshaw was, to me, is another example of a guy who's like the reality versus the hype and the circumstances make him overrated.
Well, two thoughts on the Mannings. One is this will be, I know you'll pop for this one, Chris, with this being a politics / public policy oriented joke here. But I used to make the joke about Eli Manning back in the day that, man, if this guy played, because it was 2008 and 2012, if this guy plays past the Iowa caucuses, he's the best quarterback in the world. And that's basically what he was, essentially. He just never made it there that often.
That's right. So, and it took a lucky catch.
Yeah.
And some other things for him to be, a Hall of Famer. And again, to me, that was my criteria on, on overhyped, overrated.
Well, and I have a thought about Archie Manning because, and again, the thing I love about the lounge is it ties into so many past subjects. So we did one, and this was actually back in the days at the station, in the waning days, I want to say maybe about 2010. And we did one on greatest pro wrestlers of all time. And my man, Jake Digman, was arguing for superstar Billy Graham to be a little higher on the list because he was like, well, Hulk Hogan basically imitated him, and Jesse Ventura, and later days Scott Steiner. And it's like, that seems like it's the Archie Manning argument, isn't it? Like Archie Manning, sired these quarterbacks that came after him. Like, it doesn't mean that he did these things. I mean, superstar Billy Graham had a great career, but shouldn't be near the top of the list of the greatest of all time in wrestling, certainly if work rate's factoring in. But it's like superstar Billy Graham equals Archie Manning, it seems like, for the people arguing for them, Chris.
I mean, that is a very fair analogy. And, somebody, I when you were reading them off, somebody had Trent Dilfer on there as a vote for it. He didn't make my list. I wouldn't even consider him because, again,
who rates him?
Overrated.
Who rates him?
I think most people say that like he was an average, okay quarterback who just got lucky one year with one of the best defenses of all time. I don't think anybody actually considers him overrated, right? In terms of who he was as a quarterback.
I do have to note that I'm pretty sure I was the person who put him on.
Yes.
And what I'm saying though is that for what he was at that time.
Okay.
He was that was also one of those weird Super Bowls too, where the Giants kind of got in, and that was what it was. But again, I mean, and Rick, we discussed this too. Like, I put a lot of emphasis on winning, and I feel like what ends up happening a lot is when we rate guys, people always are going to put Super Bowl winning quarterbacks on these lists. And I'll say too is that. For me, like, I made Roethlisberger my number one. I'm not doubting that Big Ben was one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but I felt like he came up short way too much in the playoffs. He has a 13-9 career playoff record. And it feels like, to me, a lot of those guys that made my list, their defenses were all-timers, essentially Kansas City, Baltimore, and the Steelers. So at the end of the day, I feel like I think they're more overrated just because when you have a good defense, you can pretty much put in an average to average to good quarterback, and you're going to win a Super Bowl in most cases. Like we saw it too also with Brad Johnson in Tampa Bay. So.
Yep. He was great that year, but yeah, no, and the funny thing is, and I always joke about this, so like Trent Dilfer actually won 2 Super Bowls. The second time around, they were calling him Peyton Manning because basically that was just a reprise of what happened with Baltimore in 2000. So, and I know this is going to come into play on your list, Ben, where you have Peyton and Eli rated because, yeah, I mean, Eli did actually win 2 Super Bowls. The degree to which Peyton won 2 Super Bowls, I think is pretty debatable. By the way, as far as quarterbacks that are all questionable being on the overrated list, me putting Cordell Stewart on, that was simply by dint of like, how did this guy hold a job that long? Like, Pittsburgh's been doing inexplicable things at quarterback for decades now. Like, there was that period of time Roethlisberger was there, but like after that and before that, like, you got to go back to Terry Bradshaw to when they really knew what they were doing. Terry Bradshaw and Roethlisberger, and then they've just gotten lucky the other times before and since. Cordell Stewart, I think, is the poster child of that. That's why I had him on there. Johnny, your thoughts about most over?
I considered my top 5 overrated. I considered all Steelers. I thought of making an all Steelers.
Yeah.
I was like, should I put Stewart, Bradshaw, Roethlisberger, Bubby Brister? I don't care. I thought about making an entire list of just
touchdown
Steelers
Tommy.
Exactly right.
Yeah, Roethlisberger was on mine because, like, he never beat the Patriots when it counted. I mean, that was a thing, it's the old pro wrestling analogy of, like, where the bad guy pays somebody off to take somebody out. Like, the Jets, that fluke win in the playoffs in 09, I think? Like, they didn't have to, like, they never had to go through New England to make it to a Super Bowl. They never proved anything against the best team of that era for a solid decade and a half plus. So,
For the most part, Peyton Manning didn't beat the Patriots when it mattered.
The one game in 06, though. I mean, that was a comeback game.
He got him once, finally.
Okay. I will say, too, though, and I remember talking about this was pre-lounge, but in the days at the station, that I think it was, I don't know if it was the 03 or the 04 AFC Championship game that the Patriots were hosting. And basically, so it was like, it's winter. I think it was a grass field, whatever. Belichick's like running hoses out there. Like, we're just gonna, I'm like, what? They're like deliberately making the field worse than it is. So like they allowed things like that to happen because it's like, we're not going to let Peyton Manning in the finesse passing game beat us. Like, that's what you have to resort to. So I don't know.
Well, and I think that was indicative of some of the rule changes where, like, people could say that there was a lot of contact, and after that point, there wasn't. Let me jump in. I had just to follow up with Chris, the Eli Manning, it was 2 catches. In 08, it was David Tyree. And in 2012, it was that Mario Manningham sideline.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he really benefited from 2 critical plays because he was definitely on my overrated list. And it was interesting to know his overall record, 117 and 117. In looking at some things, Terry Bradshaw, there were a number of, certainly with that defense, the one year, I think it was maybe 74, the defense had 8 games where they did not allow a touchdown. So, I mean, you've got that. And certainly Roethlisberger, the best of the bunch in a really a bunch of bums. When you talk about Bubby Brister and Cliff Stout, you talk about Mark Malone, Neil O'Donnell. I mean, they relied on uglying up games for decades to try and win. So, the interesting thing with Aikman that was mentioned too, and I was a big fan of Aikman. I've got him as my number 10 actually, all time. But they were even unsure because at one point they brought in Steve Walsh, who they eventually traded to New Orleans. So they were kind of, that's maybe indicative of, did they think he was the guy, or was he more of a manager with certainly the talent on both sides of the ball?
Jimmy Johnson says after that first year with Aikman, that's why he drafted Walsh. He wasn't sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, and that's going to be really interesting once we see where Troy Aikman places in all of this here. There will be some thoughts on this, gentlemen. I'm sure. Will you guys, if he makes it as far as hypothetically say honorable mention, will a couple of you have thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm an Aikman fan, but I mean, the numbers don't lie. He definitely, while he got his rings, he really managed quite a bit with the talent he had. When you talk about Emmitt Smith and you talk about Michael Irvin, Jay Novacek, a bit of an underdog in that story, but was critical in his success.
I mean, that Dallas defense, I mean, listen, I'm like you. I'm a Troy Aikman fan. He was a really good quarterback. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. To me, it's the overrated hype, right? Versus the reality. There were a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL when he played that you had plopped him onto that roster. That team would have been even more dangerous.
Very interesting. Okay, well,
Rick, can I quickly just jump in?
Rick, you don't think if you drop Steve Young on that roster?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
it'll still be great.
But I have Steve Young rated higher, so like, of course. But like, I don't.
But I mean, all right. I mean, Randall Cunningham, right? Like, I think there were a lot of guys that really would have, their how people think of them on that roster would have been very different. Again, that's why I just say overrated.
I will say Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb. There's a couple of Philly quarterbacks that I might have had potentially on my overrated list. So, I mean, that's maybe not a good guy to throw as far as I'm concerned. Now, part of it is too, I start loading up on too many of the mobile Philly quarterbacks, or however you want to put it. And I'm going to show up on a hate crimes list. So it's, just as well that my list was a little more balanced than that, I suppose. But
also, Rick, I know I just wanted to quickly note about Aikman too. Is like, I know you guys brought up Steve Walsh, but let's not forget that also in that same timeline, he got benched for Steve Berline in that game against Detroit, and that they ended up losing. So
yes, Steve Berline, who is now doing the national broadcasts, I believe, of the Cowboy games on radio. So that is,
callback by Ben. Great callback on that. I forgot about that. And if Troy flounders on Monday Night Football, they could call in Berline for one game.
Ben is the quintessential 90s guy. He'll give you a 90s callback on just about anything. Like, there's nobody that I would put above Ben for being a 90s callback guy. But as far as the individual ballots here, I think so. I think in terms of the pacing of the show, what I want to do, we have 9 ballots total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off the 5 of the folks that are not here, and then we can kind of run through those similar to like what we did with honorable mention. And you will notice with some of these guys some themes as far as whether it be winning, whether it be time frame, etc. Some guys really didn't want to go back too far, or in some cases be too current. Mike Pujakowski, a very interesting ballot. He had really emphasized winning on his ballot, and I have a few notes for him for a couple of his guys where he talked about them, but. Just to give you his ones, honorable mention, Matt Stafford, Steve Young, Justin Herbert, Warren Moon, Jim Kelly. Counting our way up from 10 to 1, this will be the token top 10 appearance of Josh Allen. He appears at number 10 on the list here. Number 9, Brett Favre. Number 8, Drew Brees. 7, Peyton Manning. 6, Patrick Mahomes. 5, Aaron Rodgers. 4, John Elway. 3, Tom Brady, 2, Dan Marino, 1, Joe Montana. Mike's notes, he says Herbert could be in the top 10 by the end of his career. And then he also says, when I say a great quarterback, I'm not going off of wins, stats, or athletic ability. I'm going off of if I had a brand new franchise and I had to take a quarterback as a rookie that I would have for the next 15 years. These are the top 10 quarterbacks that I would take. For example, if I had an expansion team, I would take Josh Allen over Warren Moon based off of what he has done and what his potential is. Based off of everything else that I've seen from Allen, I think he's a better quarterback, even though Moon has higher statistics. So those are the contributions from Mike Pujakowski. Appreciate that. Derek Allen, our youngest voter here, our token Zoomer of the bunch, he sends a ballot that has honorable mention Brett Favre, Eli Manning. So there's a dissenting opinion from some of the other ones. Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Allen. His list is probably the most, I guess you could say, current. 10, Matt Stafford. Is that a little bit of recency bias? I'll have to ask him about that the next time he's on the show. 9, Patrick Mahomes. 8, Kurt Warner. 7, Drew Brees. 6, Marino. 5, Aaron Rodgers. 4, John Elway. 3, Joe Montana. 2, Peyton Manning. And 1, Tom Brady. So ballot from him that is really interesting, and it kind of stands out a bit from some of the other ones that we have received. For Ron Glasnap, who was supposed to be with us here today, his ballots, he has some notes by all of his guys. Number 10, Patrick Mahomes, says most debatable because his career is not over. What will he add to his numbers? And he's right about that. The one moving target out of the list here, I think. Number 9, Johnny Unitas, 3 MVPs, 4 championships, set the example on how to be QB for an entire generation. 8, John Elway, 87 MVP, 2 Super Bowls, persevered through Super Bowl losses to come back and win. From there, Otto Graham, 3-time NFL champ, set the standard for QBs when the passing game was in its infancy. I would note also 4-time AAFL champion, which now counts every bit as much according to the NFL, which is the right call to make. The next one up is Joe Montana, 4-time Super Bowl champ, great player, made great by surrounded by other Hall of Famers, usually the case with the greatest players. From there, Aaron Rodgers, 3 MVPs, Super Bowl champ, top 5 all-time in passing yards. Just above him, ironically, Brett Favre, 3 MVPs, Super Bowl champ, 3-time All-Pro, 16 straight years, no missed starts. Just above him. So now we're getting to the top 3. It's Drew Brees, Super Bowl champ, 13-time Pro Bowl, over 80,000 yards, 571 touchdowns. Number 2, Peyton Manning, 4 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl titles on 2 teams. Still no debate here. Number 1, Tom Brady, 3 MVPs, 7 Super Bowl titles on 2 teams. No debate here. The ballot from Steve Servillo. His ballot was very, very interesting because of the time frame that he used, which he didn't go really current on anybody. So nobody that's still playing. His honorable mention, Troy Aikman, Doug Williams, that's interesting, Jim Kelly, Jim Plunkett, and Terry Bradshaw, counting up 10-1, Brett Favre, Dan Fouts. It's good to hear his name being mentioned on one of these ones. Roger Staubach at number 8, 7 Dan Marino, 6 Warren Moon, 5 Peyton Manning, 4 John Elway, 3 Tom Brady, 2 Joe Montana, 1 Johnny Unitas. And the one that we got from Tom Denk, our FDH golf editor, I saved this one for last here. The most entertaining submission that I got from anybody, to be sure. And I'm actually going to have to censor part of this on what he says about Marino, lest he or we get sued. But he had, and it's funny, and I guess I'll start there with his honorable mention, is that he had, and I was looking at this and I was like, wait a minute, he didn't get a most overrated ballot. No. He had Marino on his honorable mention, but he basically treated it like it was the most overrated one. He says, there's never been a player who feasted off a Super Bowl loss like Marino. This should be NFL only, but let's never forget the only reason he ended up at Miami was because he was he goes on to make drug references about University of Pittsburgh and also the beginning of his time in Miami. He says, cheap-ass bum gave isotoner gloves to his lineman. Troy Aikman did Rolex watches. Get off your wallet, Marino. Oh, but he had a quick release. Great. Key for him because he didn't like getting hit and bailed before he took a hit. Compared to the great QBs of the 80s, he was soft, had Shula and Jimmy J and couldn't get there. Johnson took one look at him and decided to get some running backs because he knew Marino wasn't a savior. Very media savvy, I'll say that. He's like the Jim Cott of the NFL, a truly epic compiler. I'd say he's the most overrated QB in NFL history, hands down, and yet he made him honorable mention. Warren Moon. Wasted some early prime years in the CFL and a little outside the limelight. I think Warren Moon would have excelled in all eras and all systems. I agree with that. Probably played on the weakest teams or close to it of all the great QBs, which is not his fault. Other honorable mention, Brett Favre, his 3-year MVP run. He was the real deal, having climbed the rungs of the NFL ladder and got better to reach his Super Bowls. Let's all pretend the Vikings and Jets years didn't happen or anything in his life after he stopped playing for Green Bay. Patrick Mahomes, I think this may rankle some. I think if you realize he had the best NFL wide receivers on his team, probably the second best receiving tight end in NFL history on his team, with one of the best offensive minds in NFL history, you may rethink Mahomes' legacy. Laughingly protected by NFL refs, and in my opinion, will have a post-NFL career like Brett Favre for shadiness. Yeah, his achievements speak for themselves, but defining the era and perfect placement and salary cap dynamics, you can easily see this ranking, which isn't all that bad. His last 7 years are not elite. Wow. He came out blazing, but since he's feasted on reputation. And honorable mention, nice to see this name in there. Just missed my list. Y.A. Tittle. His stats and achievements are prolific, and his late career surge was atypical of a brutal era of the NFL. Counting our way up from 10 to 1 for Tom. 10, Johnny Unitas. He moved the game towards a passing reliance that brought the NFL into wider favor and was superior to most of his peers, along with Graham. He defined the great QBs in the pre-Super Bowl era. 9, Troy Aikman. Every once in a while, somebody posts that Aikman was a product of the Dallas teams, and I enjoy that because it's best when idiots self-identify as it saves the time. From the teams I've seen since 1982, I consider the 1992 Cowboys the greatest NFL team I've ever seen. Despite all the drama and crazies on the team, Aikman was the unquestioned leader. Leadership and toughness were off the charts, with Troy suffering from brutalization of an unkind era for QB safety, playing on Dallas, Philadelphia, New York Giants turf 10 times a year. And from there, number 8 on his list is Aaron Rodgers. Probably as much as any top 10 QB, he was short challenged by his defenses. And while I like to shiate on this degenerate Sandy Hook truther, his peak was long and prolific, but he was the root of a lot of late career drama in Green Bay that made them happy to move on. Maybe he could have taken a little less like Tom Brady, and his defenses could have paid 2 more quality players. Was he always an a-hole or turned into one? Green Bay insulates their players like no other city. See Brett Favre commingling in hot tubs with minors alongside his Predator buddy Mark Chmura, allegedly, and those are the words of Tom Denk. 7, Kurt Warner. If Steve Young gets credit for a prolific but narrower peak, then we can do the same for Kurt Warner. Arguably the toughest QB to ever play. He took hits to his teammates that got open. It took 2 dogpile franchises to the peak of the NFL. People overlooked that the hits he took caused his hand to break and not reset, which caused his mid-prime downturn before putting on a glove and taking the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. His stats, MVPs and Super Bowl appearances, hold up well. His teammates revere him for his leadership. Number 6, Peyton Manning. The greatest regular season QB of all time, stupidly ran his offensive weapons into the ground and exposed whole playbook so top teams were ready for him come playoffs. Blew a number of playoff games when they were heavy home favorites, but his total command of offense set the standard along with Brady. 5, Steve Young. I think that there's a big tier between Young and the predecessors, but there's no shame where he's at. His peak was as high as any QB for regular season play. Self-sabotaged with unnecessary hits. I'd say Young and probably Donovan McNabb set the tone for the modern dual-threat QB. I realized Tarkenton did it, but there was a big gap between him and the other mobile QBs, so less of a legacy. 4, Otto Graham with Elway. Could easily be ranked 2 or 2C as I have him. People forget his athleticism had him win the NBA title until the Browns mandated he quit. Went to college on baseball scholarship, arguably the most disrespected multi-sport athlete. Also lost time to serving in World War II. His standing solidified all NFL 75th team and all NFL 50th team while still playing. 10 title games in 11 years, 5 MVPs, 7 times first team All-Pro. 3, John Elway. I almost have him as 2B, along with Montana, brought back the QB age, and the teams where the Hall of Fame quarterback could dominate the NFL landscape. Look at his first downs gained per attempt. Was really mobile and knew when to run, and not for the sake of running in a way that shortened a lot of QB careers. 2, Tom Brady, 2, Joe Montana, a whole tier below Brady. Ultimate high-stakes player, undeniable toughness, redefined the modern QB, could beat you in a lot of ways and made it look easy. 1, Tom Brady, unparalleled achievement under tremendous modern scrutiny. Well, that's quite a data dump there, but I'm sure you guys have been making some mental notes as I've gone. Chris, I will start with you.
Feel like I just drank out of a fire hose. Yeah, all right. You can see the Venn diagram of a lot of overlap in these top 10, right?
Yes.
I'm sure we all, and I struggled with this list, in terms of, Tittle's a great example of a guy. I was looking at him and Marino. Kurt Warner didn't make my top 10, but man, I considered him and was trying to figure out how to judge him. Some of it, was the system in St. Louis. Maybe that wasn't fair to him. I didn't put Elway on mine, right? And Elway was an amazing quarterback. But he also didn't win anything until he got that Shanahan run game.
Terrell Davis.
That kind of pushed him out for me, right? So that was my whole struggle with all of it. Is like, because there have been so many great quarterbacks through the different eras that it's like you've got to start making some choices. the people out there that will put Mahomes like he's number one, and I'm like, it's the era. They protect the quarterback. They baby him. All those things that were said, that's all true. But he also is a dynamic player, and so it's like I can't really deny that. If I, in another era, would he be as effective? Maybe, maybe not. It's again that gets hard to judge. I had Tom Brady as number 2, just because consistency of doing it for so long. He benefited from the changes in the NFL to protecting quarterbacks, allowing him to play so long and excel so long. When it came down to it, I made Otto Graham number 1 for one big reason, and that is when asked who the greatest quarterback of all time is, Tom Brady says Otto Graham. And the guy that everybody calls the GOAT, and the guy that everybody says is the best of all time, well, not everybody, but a lot of people say, when he came out and said Otto Graham, that was kind of my tiebreak, and said, okay, Tom, I'm gonna go with you on that. I was trying to figure out where to place Otto Graham in my top 3 to 4. And I'm gonna listen to the quote unquote GOAT, and I'm gonna make Otto Graham my GOAT.
Okay. All right, Ben. Any thoughts on the ballots that we've heard thus far? It was really kind of a interesting spectrum between the first 5 that I read.
And also
off.
too, Rick, it's just, and I agree with what Chris said. It's just so hard to make a list like this because we all have our different criteria. There's going to be people who are focused on winning. There's going to be people who are focused on regular season success and all these other things. So it's just really hard to judge. I did see there was Mahomes slander in there, and again, no one's gonna. For me personally, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I get it. No one likes Kansas City, but I feel like to act like Patrick Mahomes had this insane offense is a little crazy, if I'm being honest.
Well,
this was not like, I would argue like he did not have the 80s 49ers offense at that time. Like, they constantly are shifting to a bunch of running backs in Kansas City.
Well, and I will say
that's more detrimental to Andy Reid, who's never, other than lucking out for Brian Westbrook, has never had a number 1 running back. I mean, Deuce Staley, I mean, the guys he tried to march out there, he's always been by committee. So, I mean, he still makes plays. Look, Mahomes still makes plays. I do think he benefits from the referees. I think he benefits, and you can't, it's like the Troy Aikman argument. You can't hold it against the guy that he has an all-pro player working with him, right? Like Kelsey. I mean, that's good drafting. But, I mean, I have to say he made my honorable mention list, but he didn't make my top 10 as a little teaser. Go ahead.
Okay.
Rick.
Well, the one thing, and I know you'll back me up on this, Johnny, because you're the one guy on here that knows about this. But as far as Tom Dent goes, longstanding friend of both of ours, much even longer standing friend of yours. I mean, back to childhood for you.
Yeah.
Not quite for me, but a long time. Very, very strong takes from this guy. A guy who once got hung up on the Jim Rome show for making it was a David Modell Coke spoon reference that he got hung up on. It's like, exactly. So it's like, particularly you, Johnny, had to be anticipating when I said I had a lot of notes from Denk. You were probably like, "Oh, this should be good," and he.
It did not disappoint, and certainly it was interesting, and his tidbits and commentary, especially on Dan Marino, is highly fascinating. But
I censored the worst of it. It was.
We could tell.
It was. And not merely because I'm a Dan Marino fanboy, but because I don't want him or us getting sued. But that was pretty interesting what he had to say. The rest of these ones here, I'll run through the ballots and we can talk about it. Chris started to kind of tease this already on like his one. And so I'll give the rest of the ballots here and we can talk about ours before we get to the compilation of everything. I will start with my ballot. And so my listing that I had here, I had a couple of guys who, and I sometimes get branded the historical hipster sometimes when we do the Pantheon voting, like voting for Warren Johnson as the best pitcher of all time, and Willie Mays is the best player, hitter of all time. So There's a little bit of that here, perhaps. Sammy Baugh, Sid Luckman. I'm the one guy that put him on the honorable mention ballots. I also put Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, and Bart Starr. A little bit of historical hipsterism that the only Green Bay quarterback I go with is Bart Starr, because you're not going to hear the other ones on my top 10. As I work my way up from 10 to 1, Dan Marino at 10, 9 Patrick Mahomes, 8 John Elway, 7 Johnny Unitas, 6 Drew Brees, 5 Steve Young, 4 Peyton Manning, 3 Otto Graham, 2 Joe Montana, 1 Tom Brady. So I had a list where, again, I didn't expect to see a lot of the names that I had popping up on other lists, but interestingly enough, they did. And that was a thing where, so again, I'm sure like Johnny would say, it's like self-congratulatory for you to say, what a great compilation we came up with when it's so many of my guys. But I can't help it. I am impressed that ended up being the case, that a lot of people saw it my way as far as how these guys were popping up here. So as far as Chris's list, foregoing the honorable mention, number 10, Dan Marino, 9, Brett Favre, 8, Peyton Manning, 7, Aaron Rodgers, 6, Steve Young, 5, Patrick Mahomes, 4, Johnny Unitas, 3, Joe Montana, 2, Tom Brady, 1, Otto Graham. I'm going to give Johnny's list first because there may actually be more to react to potentially off of Ben's list. I'm just speculating here, but Johnny's list, honorable.
And I've got to say, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at my list and then I'm hearing the input from others, and I'm even thinking, boy, I could have switched this with this. And it's very interesting to get the hear the other takes from the panel and those that aren't with us. And I certainly even look at my list thinking I could have shifted some things around. But yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
It is. It really is interesting and fun to go through as an exercise here. Your honorable mention: Patrick Mahomes, Dan Fouts, Warren Moon, Kurt Warner, Jim Kelly. Your top 10. 10, Troy Aikman. 9, Drew Brees. 8, Peyton Manning. 7, Johnny Unitas. 6, John Elway. 5, Dan Marino. 4, Steve Young. 3, Otto Graham. 2, Joe Montana. 1, Tom Brady. Now to Ben's list, where there will be at least 1 point on the list here that I know is going to be much reacted to, much that will be getting some real feedback as we go through this here. Honorable mention: Jim Plunkett, Kurt Warner, Roger Staubach, Joe Namath, and Steve Young. Top 10. And again, we already said that the criteria that Ben was using to a large degree winning. 10, Bart Starr. 9, Otto Graham. 8, John Elway. 7, Peyton Manning. 6, Eli Manning. 5, Troy Aikman. 4, Terry Bradshaw. 3, Patrick Mahomes. 2, Joe Montana. 1, Tom Brady. I should probably lead with you, Ben, as far as thoughts on any of these ones here, but in particular yours, if there's anything that you want.
Defend yourself, Ben. Defend yourself.
To be fair, I just never want to be banned from a Manning cast, potentially.
Well,
I think that's the right thing. But again,
you retain your eligibility.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But again, too, we do have to note that Eli Manning potentially beat 2 of the greatest teams in NFL history at that time. So
yes.
I'm going to at least give him credit in that respect. Do I feel like now looking and listening to all these other lists, I feel like that was a little high on him there. But again, my thing, too, is like, whenever I think of a quarterback, I think about winning more than anything else. And I do feel like, I want to flip flop maybe Otto Graham in that spot, because for me, I was trying to determine, based on the era, how would he perform in another one? And I feel like that is the big thing with him, because he would have been a prototypical NFL quarterback in today's game. And it feels like, but again, we also have to say, like, what was his competition at that period of time as well?
Well, I don't think they really had a color line, so I don't think that comes into play. It's not like baseball or some of the other sports where it was like a lot of great athletes were excluded. It is kind of interesting in that degree when you start talking about this, because Chris, the one thing that we ever did in the history of this show that is very similar to what we did with this thing here, you were part of this back in 2017, and it was a great segment that we did, counting down the top 10 NBA players of all time. Going through that, me, you, and Steve Callis. That was an awesome broadcast that we did together. And when you talk about how guys would be in today's game, one of the names that kept coming up in the negative sense was Bill Russell. And I was like, this guy might be a power forward at best in today's game. So it's like, you look at what he did and you look at all of that. And I don't know how much, how somebody's game would translate to today. I don't know how much you can factor that in, but it's like, it's a 100% zero for Bill Russell when you start to factor that in. And there are players that don't translate in different sports from era to era.
The problem with a list like this, right? I mean, I didn't get to see a lot of these guys play, right? I've seen some clips here and there, especially way back, right? I've gone back and through the years and tried to watch, some, the old on YouTube, like old games in black and white of some guys,
Sure.
and those are kind of a trip. But then you see, the offensive lineman at 240 in front of him, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of this was trying to project modern athletes with past athletes, with the old rules and the new rules. I mean, it's very hard to do because you realize how it influences their stats, their winning. It makes it a challenge. And so, a lot of the honorable mentions that folks had in there, like I mentioned, Y.A. Tittle, I mean, Fran Tarkenton, Bart Starr, I thought about a lot of those guys. And again, admitting a lot of it is like, I didn't really get to see them and then in depth, right? And understand their quality and how they could translate. So we all, I think, end up with a bias towards more recent quarterbacks because we see them in HD, right? We've been around since the 80s when the NFL exploded and there's film on everything. You can go online and probably watch every single game that Troy Aikman ever played in, right? I mean, you can't do that with Y.A. Tittle, right? So
Right.
it's hard to be able to then translate all that. And I tried to sort of balance that. For me, it was like there's winning, there's skill, there's the resume, there's the changes in era, and I tried to just kind of mold and blend all that together. Very unscientific, admittedly, right? I mean, it's just, how do you feel about it? Because again, you end up leaving out quarterbacks. I left out Elway, I left out Drew Brees, Kurt Warner, great quarterbacks, right? And to Ben's point and Johnny's point, you hear the list from other people and you go, man, maybe that should have been my 7. Maybe I should have moved Steve Young back. Well, at the end of the day, we all got to make, life's about choices.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the whole thing here. We're all using a number of different factors. We're kind of, going with the multiplicity of this. And like I said, I'm somewhat the exception of what you're saying because I'm a guy that's a lot more willing to go off of the historical record than a lot of people. I know that like in a lot of the Pantheon things, like people have, shot me down. I'm like, well, you never watched him play. Like, I didn't live through Bobby Orr, but I think Bobby Orr is the greatest hockey player of all time because to have put up the production that he did as a defenseman, to not only be the best defenseman in the league, but the best offensive player while he's at it, arguably the best offensive player. I mean, I didn't watch much of his career. I've mostly just seen clips, but, certain things I think kind of transcend that. I'm a little more willing to suspend my disbelief if I haven't watched it with my own 2 eyes. That's not how most people are. I do agree with that, Chris. Most people are not, going to be as inclined to do that. Johnny, your thoughts on this before we get to the results?
I'm just with Chris. It's nice to hear the discussion. I'm looking at my list now, thinking I could have put some things in different areas. I think we're also we gravitate towards people we've seen, teams maybe we've liked. I certainly have bias against a few of these people on these lists. But I will say it's nice to hear a couple names. I was really happy to hear Kurt Warner's name come up on a number of lists. Warren Moon, who I thought was highly successful both with Houston and then certainly with Minnesota. And, they were robbed of that Super Bowl because Gary Anderson missed that kick. So,
It was, again, Warren Moon did have a heck of a career. And it's interesting because that's a name where when he started popping up, particularly on the honorable mentions, I was a little bit kind of surprised, but then he kept popping up. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of understood that was the case. And
I thought Fouts, his numbers pale in comparison to today, but the numbers he was putting up in the early 80s were groundbreaking.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
no one was throwing for 3,000 yards, 4,000 yards. People just weren't doing it. So,
well, and how about in all this discussion and all the quarterbacks listed by Rick and everybody's ballots and overrated even or honorable mentions? Did I hear Jim Kelly's name once?
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. I'm like, I have not heard his name once.
He was on my honorable mention list.
Couple honorable mentions.
Okay.
He was on a few,
Yeah.
and actually, since we're speculating who was where, let's get to the point now where I'm going to bring up on the screen here what is going to be our list here. This is our tabulation list of what we have for everybody, and this is up now on fantasydrafthelp.com on the main page. So I will start by going through at this point. We've already run through the our bonus voting for most overrated QBs. Those are listed here as well, and for others receiving votes. And again, on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com for those who are partaking via audio, because it's one of these things I have to keep in my mind that this is the audio video split as we're going on. Audio wherever you get your podcasts, but video, if you're checking this out on YouTube, you're able to look at this from this point on here as we're going through on the tabulations along with us. And this is the first time that the fellas are seeing what the final tabulations were. Others receiving votes. So we have a point system here, basically from 1 to 10 on the voting. It's the same one from the aforementioned 2017 top 10 NBA players of all time. So 100 points if you were in first place, working all the way down to 25 points for 10th place, and then 10 points every time you showed up on an honorable mention. So working our way up here, 10 points apiece. These are the guys that only got named as honorable mention on one ballot, alphabetical order here. Sammy Baugh, Justin Herbert. Boy, I'll just say there's a little historical whiplash on eras, huh? Hearing those names back to back.
Sid Luckman could sling it, but Sammy could though.
Yeah, slinging Sammy Baugh. I keep saying I'm trying to make slinging Sammy Merrill a thing. Ben, I won't rest until I do. Sammy Baugh, Justin Herbert, Sid Luckman, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Y.A. Tittle, Doug Williams. These ones were listed on one ballot, honorable mention. 2 ballots, honorable mention, 20 points, Jim Plunkett. 3 ballots, honorable mention, Jim Kelly, 30 points. Bart Starr, 35, so that tells me 1 honorable mention and 1 10th place. Also, Matt Stafford, the same, 35 points, and Josh Allen, the same, 35 points. This is where it gets a little harder to figure without looking at the ballots where all these guys slotted. But Dan Fouts shows up next at 42 points, Eli Manning, 64, Roger Staubach, 68, and Warren Moon, 94. What's interesting is we get to a couple points along the way, and we'll get to this, once we get into particularly the top 10, where there are some ones that are very, very, very close. Warren Moon at 94, the last of the 5 honorable mention, Terry Bradshaw with 95 points, Warren Moon 94. Can't get any closer than that. So on the others receiving votes, and I do want to note overall something that I would have been very, very surprised by, because I think I said to somebody earlier in the week, it might have been Johnny, I think I might have said, hey, guess how many quarterbacks have come up thus far? And I knew that the guess was going to be way off, and it was. Out of a potential 135 QBs, with 9 of us potentially, listing a different 15 guys, that could have been 135 potential quarterbacks. There were 31 guys who showed up on 9 ballots. It is an incredible concentration that it was only 31 QBs. So as we're looking at the others receiving votes, Chris, I'll start with you as we work our way around. Thoughts on these guys who missed the honorable mention in the case of Warren Moon very, very narrowly?
He's another one that I struggled with, and I felt bad because so much of that career was wasted in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
But I think could have been achieving Super Bowls, perhaps, and bigger and better stats. I think that's really the thing that affects him the most. It's interesting to me, like, Jim Kelly, right? Like, I
Hmm.
brought him up just before this segment, and you put Jim Kelly on the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Is Jim
Yeah.
Kelly sitting there, right there, instead of Troy Aikman? I think so. Right. I think I always thought of those guys as pretty similar,
Hmm.
pretty good quarterbacks, very similar. So that's how I look at it. I mean, I look at a guy like Jim Plunkett. I mean, I again, guys that I thought about, I have Jim Plunkett sort of in that 20 range, on mine, which again, in terms of all-time QBs, you're a Hall of Famer, right? I wasn't prepared
Chris,
to judge people like Matt Stafford and Justin Herbert, and
yeah,
I'm not considering anybody like that right now. Not till they're, they haven't done anything yet.
right,
I mean, Stafford has done more than like Josh Allen, right?
right.
Certainly way more than Herbert. So, I mean, again, I put Mahomes in my top 10 because of what we've seen so far. There's a possibility that eventually Josh Allen gets there. You could make a case for Matt Stafford if he gets another Super Bowl this year. You could really
Maybe,
give a case for Matt Stafford in the top 10, and you could hang a hat on it, but we're not there yet.
maybe, Chris, and you mentioned Plunkett. In terms of early '80s reclamation, safe to say he was the Sam Darnold of his day.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I see some similarities there myself. Perhaps Ben does as well. Ben, you had him on your list here. So your thoughts about the others receiving votes?
I'm just looking at this list. I mean, it is surprising to see Warren Moon with that high, but I know everyone loved that run and shoot offense in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like his career is his whole coalescence, essentially. But people tend to forget he played for a long time, so this is more of a longevity scenario as well for him. But I am also intrigued to see Phillip Rivers also on this list. I don't know who put him there, just because I think he's also, if those San Diego Chargers teams ever got to a Super Bowl and won it, he would be much higher on this list.
Yes, absolutely. But that's been the curse of the Chargers quarterbacks over a period of time, really. Herbert, Rivers, Fouts, great offensive teams, but never really able to get over the hump. And I think I know who put him on the list here. Yes. Derek Allen did. He's the one. He skewed the most modern, I think, in his list of the bunch here. So yeah, I figured it was him, and it was. Johnny, your thoughts on these others receiving votes?
Well, I know just quickly on Fouts, they were victim of the holy roller that one year, certainly.
Yeah.
Remember, they had to play that playoff game in Cincinnati when it was like sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah.
Certainly. But and I would just jump over to Warren Moon. Now, he also played for Minnesota with Dennis Green and Robert Smith and Chris Carter. It was a good team. But overall, certainly Stafford is got room to grow here. He wins another Super Bowl. I could see him jumping right to the top 10. Plunkett was somebody I considered for my honorable mention, especially in terms of winning. Hard to predict with some of these guys going forward, with like Herbert, even Josh Allen. I don't know if they're going to get anything done and make it. Their window, both their windows may be closing in the next year or two. We'll see. Now, who knows? Maybe they'll get a change of venue like Stafford and kind of reinvigorate their career. Rivers was one that played long enough, but those Chargers quarterbacks, hard to believe. I think it was Stan Humphries was the only one that played in a Super Bowl in the recent past. I mean, not so recent 90s, but yeah. But no, fascinating. It was good to see some of these names come up. I think it's Jim Kelly's another one, 4 straight Super Bowls. I mean, hard to believe they never got it done. I think it was Chris Berman that predicted for 10 straight years the Buffalo San Francisco Super Bowl.
Yes,
it was wrong every year. So anyway.
He was, and like I just it's hilarious that it ends up being, you could, I always say you could win any bar bet in America here on this one. Like Stan Humphries was the one quarterback that took the Chargers to the Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, that would be like if by some fluke Craig Elo had the highest scoring game in Cavs history, and you're like, who's the guy that scored the most? It was Craig Elo. So
I mean, Rick, also just to like bring up Stafford's numbers, because I just wanted to take a look. Like right now, he has based on his career, over 64,000 yards.
Wow.
Yeah.
23 touchdowns and only 128 interceptions in the regular season.
Well, and
You look at those numbers; those are pretty much top 25 quarterback all-time numbers.
yeah, I think so. But like,
Even in like inflated NFL where everyone passes more.
Here's one of the things that I love about, being here on the lounge with a panel like this. Like, you guys are going to get where I'm coming from with this. Like, I know I'm not hallucinating with this being the case, but like number one picks 08 and 09, like had that 28-3 game not happened or whatever, like I swear there were a lot of years where Stafford and Matty Ice were kind of running neck and neck, like the two Matts. Like one of them shows up here and one of them is basically sort of forgotten to history vis-a-vis any of this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting the way that this can go. The fact that Stafford was able to keep going physically for a longer period of time and have this rejuvenation that he's had here, which again, if this was baseball in the late 90s, perhaps we'd be raising eyebrows, but everybody's taking it at face value. He seems like a class act kind of a guy. No reason not to take it at face value, even if it was a little bit unusual to have your greatest year at like age 37. But I know I'm not hallucinating this, guys, that like him and Ryan were considered neck and neck for many years in the 2010s.
Well, I think Stafford landed in the recent past, landed with McVay, who I think is a terrific coach. And as much as he passes, they run a lot as well.
Yeah.
Very balanced. They drafted well. Certainly buying low on Nakua. They bought low on Cooper Kupp. I mean, arguably, best receiver of that year when he had the Triple Crown. I mean,
that's true. Yeah. And again, circumstances where you're at, Matt Ryan being in Atlanta, which as we've seen with the recent shakeup here, they just haven't really been able to figure it out over a period of time. And that's really been an ongoing thing, that one Super Bowl run, notwithstanding. Our honorable mention that we have here, Terry Bradshaw at 95 points, Kurt Warner 104, Troy Aikman 135, and then you get to the guys where they might have had a chance of making the top 10. Brett Favre 184, Drew Brees 252. It's interesting because, and I commented on this to Chris, that his ballot was the last one to come in last night as we're taping this here, and it was a different 8 through 11 at that point in time. Prior to Chris's last ballot coming in, it was Drew Brees 252 in 8th place. It was a tie for 9th between Otto Graham and Aaron Rodgers at 242. Steve Young missing out, being on honorable mention by 1 point at 241. So Chris's ballot at the end ended up reshaping all of this. Drew Brees would have made it if not for Chris. So we know where Drew Brees can send his hate mail. But,
I feel like I did a service to this organization. Thank you.
Expand on that, please, because he showed up pretty well on a number of our ballots.
You know why he didn't make my top 10?
Why?
Like he did for a lot of folks?
Why?
Because I'm looking at what Sean Payton is doing in Denver with Bo Nix, and I have to start to wonder about Drew Brees.
Okay. Well, I will say this too. And as much as I'm complimentary of what Drew Brees did on field, and I think he threads the needle as both a winner and a huge stat guy, I was very critical of him at the time, particularly in the later years in New Orleans, the cap problems they were having. Now, again, this has been a front office that, I mean, even when they were winning big, they didn't know how to manage the cap. They were always like really top heavy, and that's why their defense was like middle of the pack if they were lucky, usually not even that. But like, as much as Brady was like trying to defer money and make it easier and whatever, Drew Brees was like, screw you guys, I'm going to get mine. And I didn't like that. I don't remember. They had an offensive guard that was really good. I don't remember who it was. But he ended up being a cap casualty, basically because Brees wasn't willing to take a haircut. So, I mean.
Was it Willie Rowe?
It might have been. It might have been. Yeah, that's ringing a bell. Now, Chris, philosophically, where do you come down on that? Is that another thing you'd hold against him? Because I didn't for these purposes, but I could have.
It's stuff like that. And I remember that at the time thinking, you dummy.
That's the
But
guy
I
protecting
mean,
you.
well, and again, it's also this idea of like, Brady took a haircut again and again to make sure that he had the best team around him, right? I mean,
Yep.
he made sacrifices. Now, again, he was married to a supermodel who made $1 billion a year, and he ain't really there.
Yeah.
I understand Drew Brees wanting all the money he can get. Kobe did the same thing at the end of the Lakers, right? He could have taken less, built a better team around him, and he said, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But nobody holds that against Kobe.
Right.
So I didn't use contracts and stuff and pay as part of my rating system at all, because in terms of eras, that is completely unworkable, right? I mean,
Yes.
half the guys on your list, Rick, probably had other jobs in the off season, bagging groceries and lumbering and God only knows
Oh
what,
yeah,
or selling
contract
cars,
work,
right?
concrete
So
work. Yep.
I'm not, I
Masonry.
didn't touch that at all.
Okay. Yeah. And that's why I didn't either, because it's really kind of hard to figure as far as how that goes. An honorable mention before we move on, Ben, any thoughts from you and then from Johnny?
I think overall too, Rick, it's very interesting, especially now with newer quarterbacks, like based on either their personality or based on, their recent team success, how much we weigh that against prior eras, because I feel like, we're in a different age. We have social media, we have all these things now. So I am kind of surprised to see, some of these names that probably will be higher up in the near future be on this list. But I think if you just look at the top 10 overall, it seems fair to me. I don't see anyone on that list that I'm like, oh my God, this is a huge misjustice that they're not in the top 10. So I think overall, everyone did a really good job.
Yeah. I'm proud of the integrity of how the collective balloting ended up coming out. Johnny, your thoughts before we start to work our way up the top 10?
I would have liked to see Moon rather than Bradshaw, but the numbers are the numbers. It's nice to see Kurt Warner there. I would say a big if, and this is just interesting to see how this would have played out. Had New Orleans not been a victim of that horrible interference non-call,
Yeah,
we would have not only been privy to a great Super Bowl between New Orleans and New England, but we would have possibly seen another Super Bowl for Breeze. Who knows? So that would have been interesting to see, had that outcome been different. How would he make the top 10? I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah.
but again,
Sadly enough, the great Todd Gurley basically reduced to using a walker essentially at that point. So yeah,
horrible Super Bowl too. I mean, from an objective fan standpoint, certainly.
I think we both fell asleep at Bennick's party that year, Johnny. I think we were both sawing Z's in the second half at that one. But the top 10 here, I guess I'm just going to sort of take this in chunks because it's relatively close, as you can see. Through a period of time, it's relatively close, even between Aaron Rodgers at number 10 at 288, and again Drew Brees at 252. Because again, with one ballot to go, Drew Brees was in 8th place and slipped all the way back to the top of the honorable mention. But working our way up here, Aaron Rodgers 288 points, narrowly above him Steve Young 295, Dan Marino 318 in 8th place, Johnny Unitas 324 in 7th place, Patrick Mahomes 327 in 6th place, Otto Graham 342 in 5th place. And I will say, Otto Graham and Johnny Unitas in particular, I despaired of seeing them on the list. And I'm so happy that they are, because again, that whole thing of like, well, I never saw him play. And I didn't, again, people use their own criteria, and I didn't know how that was going to go. But I'm like, well, okay, I need to be the token guy that puts them on my lists. So I'm very happy they showed up there. And I'm very happy Steve Young made it. Steve Young, I was very dubious that he would make it. And he ended up doing very well on the ballots because it's a guy where, again, it was mentioned before, well, Warren Moon, some of his best years were in the CFL. Well, again, Steve Young starts off in the USFL, then ends up being the backup to Joe Montana, himself one of the very best of all time. So, and then the back end of his career cut short by concussions. But in between, man, that 91 to 94 stretch, I don't think you'll ever find a quarterback that played better for 4 years. And a guy who, again, the league for decades has been trying to move to like, man, if only there could be a mobile quarterback who could also be a great passer or pocket passer. A lot of them have been one or the other. And a lot of the great quarterbacks that are mobile great mobile quarterbacks have never been pocket passers. This is kind of a joke here, but like, who's the greatest black quarterback of all time? Steve Young. Because when people say black quarterback, I think they mean it stylistically as much as literally. If you're talking stylistically, who's ever done it better than Steve Young? So for him to be on the list, I'm extremely gratified. Steve Young, Unitas, and Otto Graham in particular. Didn't think I'd see it. I'm seeing it. I'm grateful for that. Chris, your thoughts on as we move.
Does that mean that you agree Bill Clinton was the first black president?
He could be, yes, stylistically, right? He played the sax with sunglasses on. What more do you want, right? I mean, we have to stop being so literal about these things, don't we? So, your thoughts on the list from 10 moving to 5 here?
You going to me?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have any fault with it other than, just sort of the movement. I mean, these are all guys I have on my list, right? It's about where in your top 10. So this top 10 list is very close to mine, with the exception of John Elway. So it's, and again, Elway was a guy I struggled with. I could have argued myself into putting him in, that 5-6 range. I think I kind of came out with him around, like 11, 12, something there. But again, that gap between those is so narrow. It becomes very, selective, personally judgmentally in terms of like, well, you're really splitting hairs. In the same way, I agree. Steve Young is in my top 10 because of that 4 years you mentioned, right? I mean, that was it's the best quarterback play I've ever seen, top to bottom, week in and week out, over a 4-year stretch was from Steve Young. It was magical. I mean, the stuff that he was doing and performing, right? And in some ways, you could even like say, like, had he been able to keep his career going, we might have looked back one day at Andrew Luck the same way.
Yeah.
We might have been like, boy, that 3-4 year stretch with Andrew Luck, and God, it was amazing, right? But of course, he had his own personal health and well-being, and he bailed out. But so he'll never make these lists. But I kind of view him similarly, like he could have maybe been a guy like Young who sneaks in there. Young was, again, USFL and backing out Montana and all the rest of that. A lot of time was wasted where maybe Steve Young would have moved up this list.
Yes.
Gone straight into the NFL and started right away and didn't have to back up one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He himself might have been up 4 or 5 more slots on this list, if not even, into that sort of replacing Montana on the list. So I don't have an issue with this entire top 10 because, again, most of them are my top 10.
Well, in terms of who had who in the top 10 here, I'm just going to list off here how many of us had quarterbacks on our list that ended up in the top 10. I had 9. I'll just tell you off the top of my head that so Drew Brees, I had in my top 10. Aaron Rodgers, I didn't. The rest of these, I don't know off the top of my head. Mike Pujakowski had 7. Derek Allen had 7. Tom Denk had 8. Ron Glasnap had 8. Steve Servillo had 6. Ben, you had 6. Johnny, you had 8. And Chris, you had 9. So Chris and I were very, very close to our lists being the same as these lists here. And again, happy to hear the name Andrew Luck come up because, again, is he ever going to make one of these lists or even an others receiving votes? Probably not. The most he's ever going to get is others receiving votes, and probably not even that. But yes, he should get talked about for how great he was when he was playing and what he was working towards before, the bottom fell out health-wise and, perhaps psyche-wise as far as dealing with the health. I think that was part of it as well. So, Ben, your thoughts about the 10-5 stretch here? It was a really chunk of the list here where there was a lot of volatility here, a lot of mobility as the ballots would come in. You'd see a lot of shuffling in this range between these guys.
Right, and at this time too, it's like I feel like if you look at the list from 5 through 10, I think there's no one I would take off of that list, to be honest. So it feels like to me it's pretty solid. And again, to go off of Chris's point, like Steve Young in one of those NFC Championship games got a really bad break on a bad pass interference call that could have given the 49ers like a very early lead, and they probably would have won that NFC Championship. So, I mean, you look back and you see too. My thing too with Johnny Unitas is that he is one of the all-time legends, and like you said too, Rick, it's very hard to place him sometimes.
Yes.
Because his statistics, if you look at it based on like future versions of the NFL, like if he was playing today, could he throw for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, barely any picks? I don't doubt that one bit. It's just there's certain guys in certain decades. It's just very hard to move guys over and make that assessment based on how they would do in a fictional universe where all these guys were in their prime and they all followed the same set of rules and restrictions.
Yeah, and again, my willingness on past Pantheon segments to vote for guys from way back in there, and a lot of times getting called the historical hipster for doing so, that's where I was just really, I'm like, Otto Graham's not going to make the top 10. Johnny Unitas is not going to make the top 10. So I was like, I'm very, very happy that it ended up being the case because I feel like they certainly deserve to be here. And I know, Johnny, again, so many of your guys showed up in this stretch here. And I know you must have some thoughts about this 5 to 10 stretch, which arguably is the most important or interesting, I should say. Arguably the most interesting, the most intriguing stretch of the entire voting might have come between 5 and 10.
Yeah, it was quite diverse with the way things were moving around. Certainly, wish I kind of had seen and known a little more about Johnny Unitas. He may have gone higher up my list. The Steve Young thing is just fascinating because he did play also in that transition when they lost Jerry Rice, and I think Owens was just coming into his own. So there was that he had to kind of weather that storm as well. The Rodgers thing is interesting. These Green Bay quarterbacks, they all have a story. They go elsewhere, and we'll see how this is going to work out. But again, you can't go wrong with this list. Fascinating that of the 135 entries, we all kind of centered on 31 names.
That's kind of amazing. I mean, because I think it was you I was talking to during the week, right? And didn't I say guess how many are in so far? And
yes.
It was like. I think at the time it was like 30. I think there was like only one more name that showed up after that. And it was just like, it's kind of incredible the concentration that there ended up being. I thought there'd be a little bit more kind of spread out as we go through. But as we get to the creme de la creme here, the top of this here, you get to a couple of different tiers if you're looking at the separation in the numbers. Because at number 5, Otto Graham, you could call that one continuous tier from 5 to 10 as far as the connectivity of that. 342 for Otto Graham in 5th place, down to Aaron Rodgers, 288 in 10th place. But it's a jump up from there. John Elway, 475 points in 4th place. Peyton Manning, 545 points in 3rd place. Joe Montana, 768 in 2nd place. And Tom Brady, 854 in 1st place. What's interesting is, so my rudimentary grasp of math tells me that 9 guys times 100 for 1st place, the tops that you could get is 900. And honestly, I kind of thought Tom Brady was going to be hugging that 900 number a little closer than he was. There were a couple of different ballots. I think there was at least 2 that had Joe Montana over him. So it's interesting that our group of voters here didn't necessarily, collectively, diverge from what the conventional wisdom is, because the conventional wisdom probably out there is Brady 1, Montana 2, and then you start to get into a real shuffle from there. But it ended up being a little bit closer than I thought it would be. And you get to where there's a differential of, 86 points, I think, 80, between the two of them. That for it to have been less than 100 is at least a mild surprise to me. So I'll start with you, Chris. Like your thoughts as we're looking at the top of the top 10 here and the way that it shakes out. If you had any kind of surprises, even if they were milder ones on how this materialized.
Really don't. I mean, it kind of goes in line with what I just said earlier about the bottom 5 of the top 10. Um, Again, the eye of the beholder. None of this surprised me. I expected Tom Brady to come out on top just based on the number of rings, the amount of winning, the statistics, the sort of universal adulation from the public and the media that he is the quote unquote GOAT. For me, it became okay, who's going to be that 2 through 5, right? Who are the people that most people, I didn't, but most people put Tom Brady as number one. And I figured then it's like, really, then who's that number two? Do people, do they gravitate to Joe Montana again because of the success? Certainly not because of the physical prowess, right? But the track record of success. I mean, even when he was in Kansas City, Montana was playing at a high level.
Yes.
And so nothing that you've outlined here in terms of the point system, which again I would commend you, was a great way to sort of rank everybody.
Thank you.
I would. My only thing is that I think if people go back and they watch Otto Graham games or highlights, okay, I think if you watch him play and you think about that in context of the modern NFL offense and the modern rules and protection of the quarterback, I think a lot of people would have him even higher because you can see when you watch him play how his game today would translate to today, and he would be the Mahomes of today, how people think of him, in terms of just dynamic and amazing. He'd be like a Mahomes, Lamar Jackson-y type of guy that could, throw accurately, versus Jackson, who really can't. I think that people would actually then maybe weight Graham a lot differently if they look at those clips and then think about the game today. I suspected that he'd be 1 or 2.
Very possibly, yeah. And again, Otto Graham being in the top 5 again, so very, very gratifying to me because, like I said, unexpected. I just the way that the balloting shook out. And again, like I said, this could lead to a joke between Johnny and I. The fact that 9 of my guys made it, Johnny, you're like, well, of course you think it's a great list, but but that's how we're all geared. That's how we all look at these things here. I guess I'm just a little more forthright about that than a lot of people. But
he was 5th because I made him first.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Well, right.
Props to you for that.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you putting him first, if you look at this here, 100 points. You were very instrumental to him being in the top 5. Nobody was more instrumental to his top 5 status than you. So I appreciate you having slotted him where you did, just to prove that he gets that level of validation from us here. Ben, your thoughts about this? That this is where the breathing starts to get a little bit difficult in the altitude here. You start to get from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and again, what order they end up shaking out in, if these end up being necessarily the 4 guys that you would expect. Your thoughts on 1 through 4?
I mean, I'm not really super surprised just because these are all legendary quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But it's also very interesting in terms of like the Q score of these guys, Brady, Montana, Manning, and Elway. They've all had either documentaries or they've all had their own TV shows in recent memory. Yeah. So again, I am a little surprised Elway's at 475 because I think he's a legendary quarterback, but he's also one of those guys I feel like very similar to Chris had benefited from Mike Shanahan's offense at that time. And Terrell Davis and Shannon Sharp. So it's very interesting, but it feels like the Q score of these guys are just so high because we just hear about them all the time. Like Montana's a little bit less, but he had an entire Peacock documentary about him recently. So it seems like a lot of these guys that we tend to remember the most get a lot of publicity, and they have these shows or these moments where we tend to remember them more than anything.
Oh, yeah. And that's where, and again, Mike Shanahan, this has been getting a lot of attention during the recent NFL hiring season starting up here. That, if you look at the McVay tree, it's pretty substantial. But the McVay tree itself is an offshoot of the Mike Shanahan tree. That goes down as one of the most epic ones in the history of the league, right alongside when you look at Paul Brown, considering that, Bill Walsh comes off the Paul Brown one, and look at how much stuff comes. And actually, Mike Shanahan from Paul Brown, or from Bill Walsh, from Paul Brown. So seeing how these things all kind of play out in a historical sense, the Mike Shanahan tree is really, really impressive. And again, the guy who benefited from it the most, it seems like, is John Elway, no question about that. And so, Johnny, your thoughts as we circle it around here on the top four guys on the list, what you thought of it, if there were any surprises, anything you liked or didn't like?
Not surprising at all. I would say it'd be interesting, just as a little caveat. I can tell you, if I need one drive at the end of the game, I couldn't go wrong with the number 1 or 2, for sure. So, I mean, I would have liked to seen Otto Graham some more in terms of end of games, how that worked. Could he master a drive? Certainly put up the numbers and won games. Elway at the end of his career could put together a drive to get a win. Manning, he had his issues, but when he certainly won with Denver. So, but yeah, can't go wrong with 1 or 2. If, let's say you need that game-winning drive, they've both proven it. So,
yeah, truly remarkable players atop a remarkable list, and a project that came together here because as I was thinking about this, that I do some studies occasionally here as I'm trying to market some things with the FDH Lounge as far as subject matter. It is meant to be the show where nothing is off topic. That's what we launched it as 19 years ago. But invariably, there will be some topics that come up more than others. The one that has been featured the most over a period of time is football in different forms. Number 2 has been TV reviews, and number 3 has been pro wrestling, and everything kind of falls back from there. So whether it be basketball, whether it be news and politics, any of the other subjects, but the big 3 have been those, and the biggest part of the big 3, probably about a third, I think, of almost about a third of all the segments we've ever done have been on football. So this is one of the most natural subject matters for us to fall back into on the 19th anniversary, is to take a look here. And this was something that I'd been meaning to do for a period of time, to reprise what we did with the NBA, with the top 10 players of all time. In the NFL, I think you want to focus it towards the quarterbacks, because if you're going across positions, and especially offense and defense, that's where it really tends to feel like apples and oranges. In the NFL, we just saw a situation where a guy set the all-time sack record for a 5-win team. So how do you measure the impact on wins and losses from, things like that. So, but as far as any additional thoughts that we didn't get to for our top 10 voting, I'll just take it around the horn one more time, and I'll start with you, Chris.
I can't wait for our top 10 offensive linemen of all time episode.
That'll be amazeballs.
And then everybody trying to figure out the metrics on that
on
thing.
that list, right?
Is it about winning? How many sacks do they allow? I guess my point is that's where these things are subjective. It's difficult. I do think it's interesting that most of the votes really zeroed in on like 31 guys. So if you wanted to do your top 30 list, well, there you go. You got it.
Yeah.
It's
remarkable.
There's a broad range of individuals and how we think that we're in this polling, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really revealing.
Yeah, only 31 guys. I mean, that to me is the most surprising part of this. I would have figured 50 at a minimum. I really would have thought that. I mean, it is kind of remarkable that we gravitate, and some guys wanted to go, like Steve Cervillo didn't go like necessarily like far back in time, but he wasn't including any players that had played recently. Derek Allen was skewing more towards the recent guys. So you had a number of different criteria coming into play, and it still was within a range of 31 quarterbacks. That's the thing I think I marvel at the most out of this. Ben, your thoughts on this?
I mean, my thing too is when we ever do any of these top 10 lists, whether it's for the anniversary or for any of these like other episodes that you've done, Rick, is there's going to be a handful of guys right now that are either coming into the league or currently in the league who are going to get into that potential top 10, top 15, top 20 that we didn't even discuss.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, too, one thing about the list is that, especially with greatness, I think it's not I know it surprised you, but I'm also not surprised because with the, I would say, the whole, myth and the persona of being an NFL quarterback, there's only a handful of guys that come to mind in most situations. So it's going to be very interesting to see if anyone from I guess we're coming off of the Mahomes generation going into the next generation of guys coming up.
Yeah, and you're right about that. A lot of the same names do kind of tend to come up, but then there's always the potential for somebody to pull one out of their ass, like, hey, what about this guy? And I would have thought that there would have been more of that, and it really didn't kind of come up as much. There were a few instances, but there can't be that many instances if there's only 31 quarterbacks getting mentioned across 9 ballots. So additional thoughts from you, Johnny?
Well, I would like to do a little top 5 maybe of quarterbacks that have won one Super Bowl only. Would be interesting to kind of rank them. And of course, perhaps we could visit top 5 coaches of all time, and maybe top 5 overrated coaches. I mean, you can anticipate one of my overrated coaches on the list already, I'm sure, Richard. So, there we go. One
Yes.
and Reed, but not to muddy up that, but would be fascinating to do a top 30, as Chris mentioned as well. So
absolutely. Well, and again, and this is a thing where there have been past panels that have combined parts of this panel, but not all of it. We've never done it with these 4 previously, but this cannot possibly be the last time. We'll have to do a panel with this 4 on something else coming up. And based on scheduling and availability, if everybody can make it, again, NFL draft night, if nothing else, we're going to be doing that again, going coast to coast. So look forward to getting in the dignitaries for that one. Guys, thank you so much for being here for this 19th anniversary show. You guys have all been such a huge part of the FDH Lounge over a period of time, and it is much appreciated. And again, thank you to everyone who voted in our balloting here for the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. And this has just been such a wonderful way to celebrate the 19th anniversary of a show that has absolutely meant the world to me and been probably my favorite project that I've ever been involved with. So again, thank you guys for being a part of it and helping to make it happen. And thank you all, everybody, for checking out FDH Lounge mini episode 1900.